All right, mic check, I'm good. So I'm Ceron, CWB Association Welding Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding Podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association Podcast. My name is Ceron, and today I'm bringing in a special guest who's coming in to us from, I believe, the Ottawa area, because that's where her local is, Shannen MacDonald. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. And for the people that are going to be listening in, if you hear a little bit of background noise, Shannen is coming to us from her vehicle. So apparently that's where the best internet is in Ottawa. So Shannen, how are you doing today? What's the weather like there?
Balmy, yeah. The weather's really, really nice. It's maple syrup season, so that's exciting. It's nice weather during the day. Sun is shining. Can't complain.
You know, I've heard that from two people now today from Ontario that it's maple syrup season. Isn't every year maple syrup season, or is it like? I was talking to someone earlier today. They said that they can only pull maple syrup from their trees every 2 days, or every 2 years. I mean, sorry.
Oh, I am not sure. I thought you could do it every year. It's my first year doing it, so I'll have to look into it before I do it again next year.
Yeah, it's I love maple syrup, and I travel like around the world, and Canadian maple syrup is like currency. It's like gold, because they don't sell it anywhere else in the world. It's incredibly hard to get, and everyone thinks that they have maple syrup, but it's just like that fake corn syrup stuff. And when they get to try real Canadian maple syrup, it's brutal. Like, they just go crazy over it.
Oh, yeah. It was definitely a culture shock my first time going down to the States asking for maple syrup. And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'm like, that's not what this is.
Well, so let's start with where you are. What's where do you call home, Shannen?
I am just east of Ottawa City by about half an hour by car. And I'm working right now in the city center, but I work kind of all over, and Ottawa's been my home for probably about 15 years now.
Oh, so where were you born? Where's the story begin?
Oh, I was born on the French side. I was born in Quebec.
Oh, so do you speak the Francais?
I'm pretty well fluent in French. Yeah, my English accent is pretty strong, but they let me get away with it.
Good. So, you know, you're just outside of Ottawa, and that'll lead to the next question. You work for the Ironworkers.
That's right. Yeah.
And we've had many ironworkers on the show, including your dad, who's an ironworker, and Kent MacDonald. He was one of my early interviews way back, and he's also a member of the CWB Association local chapter in Ottawa. So, you know, he's very well involved. So I'm going to ask you, are you a ironworker because your dad's an ironworker, or are you an ironworker, you know, as opposed to your father? You didn't want to, but it just happened.
I mean, he was definitely my in. It sort of happened pretty organically. I originally went to school for visual and creative arts.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make a living maybe as a tattoo artist, selling some paintings on the side. And in school, actually, they had us do some metalworking projects, and I tried my hand at welding, and I'd been exposed to it quite a bit growing up, obviously. And so I was fairly familiar with it, and I had a really fun time. I made this probably about 5 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet big metal spider, and I had a blast doing it. And when I got out of school, art didn't really take off right away. Big surprise to everyone involved. And so I started practicing welding at the hall. And, after a month or two, my dad was like, well, you need a job and we're hiring. So not going to force you, but it's good money. And so, I applied. And that was almost 7 years ago now.
So as a young girl growing up, with your father in the trades, did you ever feel that perhaps he would want to steer you away from the trades? That's a conversation that I've had with many parents who are in the trades. My dad was a welder. He was a boilermaker, and he didn't want me to be a welder. He kind of was trying to push me away from welding, and I ended up doing it because it was the same thing. He could get me a job over the summer, and it was better money, and then it kind of stuck. But, in your house growing up, was there a thought that you should be in the trades, or was it a little bit of pressure to go a different direction?
If he had a preference one way or another, he was good about keeping it to himself. My parents were very supportive. They pretty much, even from a young age, they pretty much just encouraged us to do whatever we enjoyed doing, which is how I got away with going to an art school, I think.
There's nothing wrong with an art school. My daughter went to an art school, and she's got an awesome job now. So.
Oh yeah. Oh, I don't regret it. I still love to paint and stuff. So I still use it.
Yeah. Well, and there is a sense of artistic control in welding. The steadiness and control of your muscle and hand-eye coordination is a big part of it, right?
Yeah. I think it's part of the reason I was able to get my first welding ticket so quickly after starting to practice, because there's a lot of transferable skills there. Yeah, line weight and steady hand and all that.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you got out of high school, you went to a visual arts school. Did you finish the degree? Did you start looking for work and struggled and then went back to the trades, or what was the path there? Once you were already studying, towards your arts degree.
I finished. Once I left school, I was out in Toronto, and I stayed in the Toronto area for another year after that. And Toronto being what it was incredibly expensive. So I was working about 60-hour weeks, and sort of not really making enough money to sort of save up for anything, but also not really having a whole lot of time to pursue anything other than the service industry that I was in. Mm-hmm. So I ended up abandoning that and coming back home and hemming and hawing about what I would do next, and I think I never really committed to art as a career because I really enjoy it, and I was worried that if I was forced to do it for 40 hours a week, I would maybe not enjoy it too much anymore.
No, it's really interesting that you say that. I initially went to university for computer science because I love computers and tech and robotics and all that stuff since I was young. But I dropped out of computer science because I didn't want to do it for a living. And I still, to this day, play with computers and do techie stuff and build and code. But I do it as a hobby, and it's way different than doing it for work, right?
Yeah, definitely relatable. I don't know if I would do as much of the art that I enjoy now if I was doing it full time for other people.
So do you still do art? Did you ever get into tattooing at all? Did you get to do any of those things that you wanted to?
I didn't. I did a little bit of tattooing actually at the end of high school, just on pigskin. I never tattooed a human. But I did, now that I'm doing the ironworking, I occasionally paint people's pets for them. That's kind of the niche I fell into. But I enjoy doing landscapes too, just as a passion project for me.
Yeah. And do you have tattoos?
Yeah, several, yeah.
Did you design your own tattoos?
Yeah. I mean, there was artistic input from a few of the artists that did some of my work, but there's a couple on me that I drew myself and had someone else put on my body.
All right. So let's talk about when you decided to join the Ironworkers. Now, when I got into the trades with my father as someone who was known in the industry in my area, I had to kind of approach it a little bit differently. I first of all got put at the bottom of every list, got all the jobs, and got paid the least of everyone, because everyone was really concerned about it looking like I was getting preferential treatment. Now, in the union environment, that's a little bit different because there's a lot of family combos. There's a lot of, personal name hires that are usually related. And did you feel any of that pressure of, well, your dad's a lifelong iron worker, you're now following in his footsteps, and perhaps expectations about your work conduct or your skill level or anything like that?
I think a lot of the pressure that I was feeling is that there's a lot of reverence for my father in the trade, and a lot of people speak very highly of him. And so I think a lot of people expected me to be like a really great welder, and I would do well in welding, and everyone would be like, well, of course she's good at welding. Dad's a great welder, right? And I'm like, well, I didn't inherit. I did have to practice. But other than that, the nepotism, again, if people were feeling that they were pretty good about keeping it to themselves, I did kind of put the pressure on myself, definitely, of trying to, make my own name and my own reputation.
Yeah, and in the ironworkers, there's a lot of different fields, a lot of different areas of the ironworkers that they could be pursued. You can be just on the structural side, erecting. You can be a joiner. You can be a welder. Did you know immediately once joining the ironworkers that you wanted to be on the welding side, or how did that career first roll out when you signed up?
Well, my first almost 2 years in the union, I worked as a glazer on some composite crews with the glazing union. And after that point, I was very lucky, and I kind of got to try a little bit of almost everything the trade has to offer. I did stairs and railings, I did some big welding jobs, I did some structural jobs, and I got put with a really great foreman for over a year, who really encouraged me to try everything, and made sure that I was doing all of the things that an iron worker would have to do in their career, to make sure I was cut out for it. So,
And when you started as an apprentice with the ironworkers, as a female, what was the representation for you in your first, block of training and those first jobs? Was there women with you in your block, or, in your job sites? What, how well represented was it, or were you kind of isolated?
Well, to date, I'm the only structural iron worker in my hall. But by the time I went to school, I did my first 2 blocks of school in Toronto, and they have a lot of female iron workers. So I was able to sort of branch out and hear their story, which was a great experience. And there was a period of time we had another female apprentice come on, and it wasn't what she was looking for, but it was a spark of hope holding on to it.
Well, 721's a big hall, right? So like if you're out in Toronto, there's going to be a lot more people in general, right?
Oh, definitely. And they I think part of that is their women, I think, deal with a lot more than I do. Not only do I have sort of like my father's reputation to sort of insulate me from bad behavior, I think, but also I think a lot of the guys that I've worked with are really kind of excited, and it's they're really, really great people to work with, and I haven't had any problems, whereas I think they deal with that a lot more because at that point women on site are old hat, and it's
Now, why did you have to go to the 721 local to study for your blocks? Do they not offer them in your local hall?
Well, we actually had our training center get up and running partway through my apprenticeship. So it was up and running during the term that I went to school, but we had a backlog of apprentices that needed to go to school at that point, and I was kind of at the bottom of that list, and it's good to get it out of the way. So I volunteered to go out to Toronto because being a bigger hall, they run courses a lot more often than we would.
So you were down in the dungeon at 721.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
For people that have never been to the IW 721 local, outside they have this beautiful building, glass and steel with the big structural setup in the back. It's very impressive for right in Toronto, right off the main train line, parking. Like, I mean, it's a gem really for a hall in such a GTA is tough to find anything, and they really got a nice little space. And then you go in and you see this beautiful like lunchroom and training centers, and like the classrooms are beautiful with like smart TVs. And then you go down to the dungeon where the welding takes place. And I kind of always laugh like with Chris Rebello, who's out there. And I was like, what's going on down here? Like, you guys got to shine this place up, put some new lights in here.
Yeah. I can imagine it's difficult to overhaul the basement of a building like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely the neglected part of their setup in terms of things that got a spit shine the last time they did a renovation.
So tell me about your training, in terms of your first block. How did you feel as a new, fresh recruit as an iron worker? Did you find it difficult? Did you find it exciting? Let's walk through your training and tell me about the highlights.
Yeah, I think it's all been really exciting. I'm still excited. I still feel like I'm learning every day.
Mm-hmm.
But I was really fortunate, pretty much right out of my intermediate training. I started working for a company pretty steady, and they do a lot of big structural work, and that felt like the highlight for me. Leading up to that, I'd done exclusively glass, and I was a little bit worried that I wasn't getting enough of the structural and even some stair railing type of training, and that I would make it to the end of my apprenticeship and not really know any of the skills that would be expected of me going on a structural job. So coming out of that block of school, I kind of got some good interesting buildings. Yeah, instead of like big box buildings where there's a lot of people and you sort of end up doing the same thing every day. I got really lucky, and I started doing a lot of jobs that had just really interesting steel to work with, and so I was able to sort of do something new every 2-3 days, and it was always changing, and I felt like I just got to learn all the time, and I'm really grateful that that's kind of how the cards played out. And
now you say the cards played out for you in that way, but what if you're an iron worker, and you may or may not know the answer, but what if you're an iron worker and you haven't had that break yet, and you perhaps want to get into welding, but you just can't seem to get those jobs? How do you vocalize that? Who do you talk to? How do you say, hey, I've been here 2 years and I haven't welded on any jobs yet. How do I get in that? Is it easy to switch over to find those gigs, or how does it work?
Oh, great question. I think networking is, it's important with any job, really, but I mean, if you're going to union meetings and you're showing your face and you're talking to the right people, and normally how it works is you go on the list and at the end of a job and you get sent out, and if you feel like you're not getting the kinds of jobs you want, you are allowed to solicit your own work. Mm-hmm. You're allowed to sort of branch out and ask if someone's hiring and ask if they want you on their crew. And if you're on a crew and you're not doing the type of work that you would like to be doing, my go-to method has always been like, hey, did you know I have a welding ticket? Hey, did you know I have my 0 to 8 ton crane ticket? Just letting you know, just in case you forgot. Just because, if they don't know, they're not going to switch. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yeah, and that's an important note because, I've done work with the Ironworkers as a permitted welder, but I've always done it through my tickets, my qualifications. So I'll have my stainless all positions and my flux core and my stick, and then I can go to the hall and say, look, these are my certifications. What work do you got for me? And that way it always lines me up quick and easy because okay, this job needs this job needs that, off you go, so I guess if you want to be a welder for the Ironworkers, it'd be probably a good idea to get those welding certs, right?
Oh, yeah. That's definitely step one if you want to weld, is be allowed to weld.
Yeah. And what was your first one that you got? Was it the 7018 or in Canada, 4918 all position, or did you do flux core first?
No, I started with my carbon ticket. It is 7018 for us. And then I did my flux core and then my stainless.
Yeah, and which stainlesses do you have? Stick or flux core? Yeah. Which is out here in Saskatchewan in the West, stainless gets you lots of work. I've heard that out east it's not as much, but I find that it's always a good ticket to have in your pocket.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had my flux core for 2 years and never welded flux core, but I got a job with my flux core ticket. They just didn't end up using me for that. And then now I'm gone. I've used my stainless ticket. It must have been for a week and a half, and I'm just my check test is at the end of the month now, so it's been 2 years, and I haven't used it a lot. But again, it's useful to have, and if that work comes up, it's the guaranteed job, right?
Well, and make sure you keep up your check test because doing all 4 plates of stainless sucks.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to be doing that again. It's a tedious process.
It's a all day affair to get your 4. Like I can hammer out an all position flux core, an all position stick ticket in I could do all 4 plates probably in under 2 hours, cut and ready to bend. Stainless, not so much.
You just can't rush it.
You can't, and it
doesn't like to be rushed.
No, it does not. You got to take your time, and it doesn't cut as well. It doesn't, and then it pulls like crazy. So that when you're watching them bend it, you're like, "Oh my gosh, it's got to bend so far."
We're lucky we get to send ours out for X-ray, so we're spoiled like that.
Oh, that's spoiled. That's too easy. Come on, you got to bend those bad boys all the way around.
Now make a bracelet out of it. Yeah. Let's really test our skills.
So as you started working through your block, how much work was there for welders? Like I just had a meeting last week with the guys in Hamilton, the 736, and they were saying that basically all iron workers signed up right now have to take welding. Like there's just no choice. There's just so much work that they don't even have the option of oh, I don't want to be a welder. I just want to do this, or I just want to do that. Now it's no. Everyone needs to get their tickets. Everyone needs to be able to weld. There's just so much work. Is it the same in your hall and where you are?
I know there's definitely people who kind of stubbornly protest getting their welding tickets. It's not really what they like to do, but most will admit that it's still useful to have on you. And because we're such a small local, it is useful to pretty much know how to do it all. I know bigger locals, you can get away with having sort of your niche and what you do, and you can stick with it almost your whole career, depending
Where
on
you are.
what kind of work. And
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. But that's just not the same out here. We are pretty steady. I know we've got, because being a government town, we have that to sort of insulate us and kind of give us a steady stream of work pretty consistently. But it's you pretty much have to be able to do. You need to have a full resume, anyways.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is a great time to take a break for our advertisers. When we get back with the interview with Shannen here, we're going to talk about the kind of work she does in Hamilton in the area. You know, what's a typical work life for an iron worker for her area. And also, I want to talk a little bit about her volunteerism, if it's there, or how it works with the ironworkers. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere on the CWB Association podcast. We'll be right back after these messages.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we are back here on the CWB Association podcast. And right before we went to break, I said Hamilton, and I mean Ottawa. I was in the Hamilton region, so that was stuck in my head. So I'm sorry, Shannen. I mean the Ottawa area. So as we were leaving off during the break, you were talking about, you know, you're local and it's a smaller one in Ottawa, government town. What is the standard work for your hall? You know, what is it that you usually do? What's the industry around you that keeps the ironworkers busy?
Oh, wow. Well, the Parliament buildings have been they're sort of been oh gosh, what's the word?
Endlessly
Not refurbishment.
renovated.
Yeah. They're just putting all sorts of fun stuff in there and taking stuff out, and there's lots of construction work in and around not just the Parliament buildings, but a lot of the buildings surrounding the Parliament buildings that are also government related, we'll say. So I started my career in glazing, as I said, and they were installing this giant glass dome overhead. It must have been a several year project to get that all in place, and I've sort of been in and out of there over the years, putting in temporary railings, putting in permanent railings, and even sort of like some structural reinforcing where they're adding stuff, but it can't support the load, or permanent structures so they can excavate. There's just almost endless work, it seems, to get that all done. Plus the OLRT, the subway system, train system. I'll say it's not all underground. That's been an ongoing project for years as well. That's been a lot of welding and rigging, and kept a lot of people working for a long time.
So when you look at your scope of work for your hall, it sounds like it's mainly structural, mainly building and building related.
Yeah, we've done like the work for the OLRT. I know some people were working on the stations themselves, which is structural work, but all of the overpasses need to be reinforced as well, and so those are a lot of concrete. So it wasn't a lot of excuse me,
welding,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of welding to go in, but it was stud welding. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for you, are you good at concrete work? Because I'm terrible at it.
would like to say, well, I didn't do any pouring of concrete. That's definitely not my skill set. We just land it. It shows up done, and we put it in place.
And
So
like, I
that's
mean,
why I
is there any mines or any mining work or forestry or lumber, paper? You know, like most of the halls will do a lot of the resource maintenance for their province or their area. Does Ottawa have any of that stuff?
Not in the city. I
No.
know I've never been on any of the shutdowns for maintenance, but I know there's like cement plants and car plants and stuff that they're reliable because they're sort of annual or biannual maintenance that goes on in them.
But it wouldn't be like a big part of what comes up on the job line there.
Not if you're working steady. Like there's certain I guess a certain percentage of the hall kind of works on like longer jobs, and then there's people who kind of chase the shutdown work because they're long hours and in a short period of time. So you'll end up working 12-hour shifts 7 days a week or longer, and that's where there's big bucks there if you can hack it. But
Yeah,
definitely
I used to be one of those chasing the shutdowns over summer because I was a teacher, so I'd have summers off, so I could go pick up a couple shutdowns in the summer and then cash up. So it was like the perfect scenario.
Oh wow, yeah, that's clever. I can't imagine doing that year round. I feel like you'd get burnt out really fast.
Some people do. Like I worked with some people from all over Canada that they would just chase shutdowns across Canada back to back to back from coast to coast, and they would be making like $250,000 a year, but they'd be working like they would only get like maybe 20 days off the entire year, and that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, and also, I mean, a lot of if you're trying to have a family and it's not super sustainable unless you have a really supportive partner.
Maybe that's a little bit too personal, but did you experience any of that as a child with a tradesperson dad? That was he on the road much? Was he gone for any extended period of times? Or it sounds like in Ottawa, it's pretty steady work at home. Here in the West, there's quite a bit of travel, so most tradespeople do get sent out. I was away from home quite a bit.
Well, actually, when I was in grade school, when we were in Montreal, my father was an auto mechanic, so that was pretty steady, close to home work. He also at one point was driving tow truck for the same company, and so by the time he was an iron worker, I was in high school, and it was not cool to be friends with your parents at that point. So anytime he was doing longer hours, I was less affected.
You just didn't care.
It's kind of avoiding saying that.
We were all teenagers. We know how it works. You just don't like whatever.
Come home, ask you how your day was. You're like, oh, whatever, Dad.
Yeah. Oh, you're here now? Whatever. Yeah. So now what's the career look like for you going forward? You have your red seal in ironworking?
That's right, yeah.
Do you look at possibly getting your red seal in welding?
I've thought about it. If I'm not mistaken, you need 4 all-position tickets to pass. Am I misinformed on that?
That is incorrect. Yeah.
Okay.
So as an iron worker, there's a couple of interesting things. First of all, as an iron worker with a red seal, you get quite a few hours taken off of what the requirements are to get your welding red seal. To get your welding red seal, depending on the province, it's about 5,400 hours to challenge the exam if you don't want to go to school. It's a 125 question multiple choice written test, and then 6 position welds, including one which is oxyfuel cutting. There's also gouging involved, and 4 of the 5 welds are open root. So it's quite a bit different exam than the CWB qualification exams.
Oh, wow. It seems, yeah, that sounds pretty intense. It did cross my mind when I was in school. I don't know that that is something that I would be willing to pursue at this time. I feel I've started to be pretty involved with. I'm a delegate for the Ontario District Council Women's Committee, and that started to take up quite a bit of my time. I feel like the Red Seal ticket would be pretty time consuming.
It is.
Plus, I want to have some.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
It's a tough test. I do know quite a few people that have both Red Seal welding and Red Seal ironworking, or Red Seal welding, millwright, Red Seal welding, boilermaker. They all kind of mix. They're all in the same world of welding. And I know that, like, I have 2 Red Seals. It's been very helpful for me to get like substantial pay increases for my work with 2 Red Seals. So like, I mean, if you're thinking about chasing some cash, it does help, but it's not an easy test. It takes practice. You'll have to book some time at the hall to burn quite a few coupons.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, maybe sometime down the line. It's definitely not something I would. I'm not going to say absolutely not, because never say never. And I do enjoy welding a lot. I'm still excited to do it. So.
Now, talk to me a little bit about the volunteer work you do. Like, I know your father through his volunteer work with the Canadian Welding Bureau Association. He's part of the chapter in Ottawa, and he likes to give time to help support projects like that. And you mentioned briefly that you're a part of a women's council for your area. Did you get into volunteering early, or is this something that you're kind of just dipping your toes in now?
I have wanted to sort of promote the trades for a while now. So pretty early on as an apprentice, when the opportunity to like speak at high schools or do trade fairs and stuff like that came up, I always jumped at the opportunity, because I think the representation is a big part of promotion. And then sort of being sort of the only one on the structural side, I would like to mention there are, I think 5 reinforcing iron workers in our hall now. So it's not just me, but I do really enjoy sort of the outreach, and I'm really excited to hopefully influence some people to join our trade, because it is a lot of fun, and I think the sort of grisly nature of it puts people off, but it's fun, and it's not. You don't need to be a 200-pound fridge of a human to make it.
No, the technology's come a long way, and it's gotten a lot safer. And there's a lot of other trades within welding that aren't ironworking even, like people look at the ironworking life, and ironworkers are kind of in the trenches, boots on the ground type of field. But there's lots in the welding world that isn't dirty, that is nice and clean. And even if it's sales, if it's even support, or if it's even, different aspects of the trade, we need women in all those aspects, right?
Oh, definitely. We are. It's been talked about from people in the industries, a lot of industries, that the baby boomer retirement is going to be a problem, and we're gonna need more people, and that includes women. I feel like all of the men who want to be in the trades are in it, so it's time to start looking elsewhere.
So what's some of the work you do with your council? What are some of the outreach programs that you take part in?
I and one other member are currently working on a recruitment presentation, and hopefully we'll be able to sort of make it modular so that it fits pretty much any demographic that we'd be presenting to, as well as versatile enough that anyone could give the presentation. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that get done. And so that's the two of us. That's sort of our focus right now. But the rest of the committee, we've sort of like divided responsibilities, and they're trying to push for different types of training to work on the other things in the trade that prevent women from getting in the trades, like some like harassment training, or like, so, you know, we've talked about PPE and how it's not always suitable, and
Yeah, and that's always
you know,
been a big struggle
yeah.
for women. Yeah, just finding proper fitting PPE. As a teacher, it was really upsetting to watch young women roll into a welding class day one excited with all the other students. You know, you'd have 40 guys and 3 girls or 5 girls, and everyone gets excited and everyone gets their gear, and always, you know, there's going to be 1 or 2 of the females that nothing fits properly. They're either too small, the gloves are too huge, you know, the body shapes are different, and things don't button up or don't fit right. And it was really frustrating because it kind of puts a downer on the day. Everyone's all excited, and it kind of takes a little bit of that shine off. And I hated that feeling. I hated being like, ugh, there's no options for you, and there's very little I can do to help, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I remember that experience very well. You sort of you get all ready, you know, first day of school, and you sort of feel like a toddler that got into your parents' closet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is a little sort of disheartening, but it has come a long way. And I have been able to, I sort of have my go-to brands that fit me, and that I feel I can actually work in without, you know, getting caught on everything or not being able to move. And the downside to that is it is more expensive because it's sort of specialized workwear. But we also get paid very well for what we do, so I do feel it's worth it to buy things that'll last and fit. And I'm not going to buy a $90 pair of work boots because those are my knees. Yeah, I'd like to have knees when I'm 60 years old.
Yeah, I remember doing that when I was young and dumb, and being like, well, my work gives me $250 a year or $200 a year for work boots, but I'm just going to go buy $99 Walmart work boots because they're just cheap, and then, you know, whatever. And, you know, by the third day, you got blisters, and your ankles are hurting, and your feet are sore, and your knees are hurting. It's like, that was a mistake. Then you go buy $100 inserts, the shoe line inserts, to make them like the gel liners to make the boots better. And it's like, well, that was dumb. You know?
We'll consider that a $100 lesson learned.
Yeah. And now I know exactly my favorite brand, and I know which brands I'm okay with. I know which brands I don't like, and it's different for everyone. Like, I know, like, I'll give you my top 3 and I'll tell you why. And then you're going to do your top 3 and tell me why. Okay.
Sure.
So my top brand of boots is Terra. I love the Terra brand. They used to be Canadian made in Halifax, but now I heard they got bought by another company, I think out of the US. But they make a carbon fiber boot made for welding. All the stitches face down so they don't catch sparks, which is ingenious. And they're carbon fiber, so they weigh as light as a sneaker, and they're so comfy. They got the little loops for your fingers to pull your boots on. Love that touch. You know, and they're $300 and some bucks. They're expensive, but I find that they last a long time. That's my number 1. If I can't find those, I think the most comfy boots on the market are Caterpillars. Caterpillar makes super comfy boots, but I find that they're heavy. And I don't like that, especially if I'm ironworking and I got to climb up and down stairs or railings 1,000 times a day. That gets really heavy. And then my third would probably be Red Wings, which I was shown by Ironworkers because they're a very popular Ironworker boot, Red Wings, but I don't like the flat sole on them. I like having a heel to catch on ladder rungs. So if I'm going to get Red Wings, I'll get ones with a heel. Those are like my top three. You?
Oh, I like that. My number one most comfortable boot is probably a Thorogood, but I'm not allowed to wear them on all the job sites but they're the only boot I've been able to find that comes in a narrow foot size and has a wedge sole.
Nice.
And
yeah.
I've worn the wide boots before, and I'm rolling my ankle all the time. It's just I just can't get away with it.
It's really uncomfortable if it's too wide. Yeah.
But more recently, I tried Irish Setters, and they're a pretty nice boot. I got myself a tube of shoe goo because the stitches popped pretty quickly on them. Probably because I got some slag or something.
If the stitches face up, like so many work boots do, which is so dumb. If the stitching is up, it catches the sparks and melts them.
Because gravity, right? Yeah.
Right. Duh.
But I mean, and I have 3 pairs of work boots. So I'm a bit particular about. I wear my Thorogoods in the summer, and I wear my Irish Setters in the spring and fall because they're slightly insulated. And then I have big winter tires for the winter time. They're big honking and they're nice and warm. And I can't if my feet are wet or cold, I'll just be grumpy. So I make sure to have nice, good boots.
Good
I also
socks.
have a pair of rubbers that are really, really clutch. And they don't burn off with the sparks. I was really surprised by that.
Oh, awesome.
I listed 4.
Yeah, I know that I had a student once who she was, I think, 4'8", just super tiny, and she was a size 4 adult shoe, and she was basically out of luck. Like there was just like, nope, nobody makes a boot for you. Too bad, and that's really frustrating.
Geez, size 4. Yeah, no kidding.
And then her hands. Imagine gloves. Like very few companies do extra small. Very few, right? And like you try holding on to something with gloves that are too big. It's like impossible.
Oh, it's a nightmare. Yeah. I never take the gloves that are offered by companies because, of course, in order to fit everyone, they get extra larges and like swimming in them, right? And you can't pick up your anything really, and just throw them out the side of my lift.
Yeah, they're just somebody else. Give them away to somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I go out of my way for good gloves too.
Yeah, no, it matters too. Now, for yourself, coming up through the Ironworkers, now a Red Seal, and establishing yourself kind of as a mentor because you're volunteering, you're trying to give back to the community. What are the next steps for you? Where do you see yourself in a couple years? As many ironworkers do that are ambitious, they start to become trainers or, they start to teach some of the classes. Are you looking to get into that side of the field with the ironworkers in terms of a trainer or advisor or, working in the office, or are you happy out in the field welding and working on your projects for the foreseeable future?
That's a great question. I think I would really enjoy teaching, and I love sort of sharing knowledge. Even when I'm, if I'm working with an apprentice, I have a really good time sort of like sharing knowledge and learning oftentimes too. But I don't think I would do it full time at this stage. Even in the next couple of years, I do really enjoy my job, and I still have a lot of fun every day. And the idea of sitting at a computer every day is I like the sun.
Yeah, I don't get to see the sun very often anymore, and it kind of I can't wait for spring because then I spend more time outside in my garage playing. But when it's minus 40, even though my garage is warm, it's not the same. I don't like it.
Actually, I mean, minus 40 is kind of where I start to question my life choices. But I don't mind working in the winter. If you get, it depends on what you're doing. To be fair, if you're running around on the ground rigging, like, you barely feel the cold, and there's or if you're swinging a sledgehammer for 8 hours a day, you're not really going to feel the cold there either. And even in the summer, I love getting a good sweat. And so, I love working outside.
You really are an iron worker. Wow, you just summed up like what other people hate, and you're like, oh yeah, no, it's awesome, best part of my job.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bleed all the way through, so that's good. To wrap up the interview, let's finish off with a couple of questions. First of all, as a woman coming up in the industry, what would be perhaps an obstacle that you faced that you would like to give other women a heads up? Like, this might be something that comes up, or it does come up to the women you talk to all the time. Heads up, this is coming. Maybe prepare or think about it in advance so it's not shocking.
Yeah, that's a good one. I feel like I like to talk about all the good things and get people really excited. But I think universally, out of all the women that I've talked to in the trade, it's not just ironworking. You got to be aware that the bathrooms suck most of the time.
Mm-hmm,
they're not going to be clean. Most jobs, they do give you your own, or they're well maintained if they're shared. But even still, you got to be okay with going in a porta potty sometimes.
Yeah, bathrooms can be a real iffy thing, especially if you're on a remote job site. They can get pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
Earplugs in your nostrils. Earplugs in your nostrils, people. Yeah, always carry a spare set of earplugs, and you put them in your nose when you got to go into the gnarly one.
Yeah, because that's kind of a reality for construction for now. I know, at least in Canada, we don't have to deal with those like half porta potties. I don't know if you've seen those. That's brutal.
Yeah. Oh man, I worked in Africa, and it was literally a trench. That was the bathroom, and that took a little bit of getting used to.
Oh my God, I can imagine. I don't know if I could hack it with a trench.
All right, and for the last question, we talked about an obstacle, and that was a great one. I haven't had that one, and it's very true. Very, very good, very good observation. But on the other side, what is something that has just been super inspiring for you as a tradeswoman? In the field, what is an aspect of the trades that you just wish all women could understand and get inspired by?
Oh, wow. I guess I am just a more confident person. I was pretty confident before, but I think if I don't know how to do something, I'll figure it out, because that's what you do for a living every day. And I remember even learning how to weld. Like, one of the first things I did coming into the trade, you feel like Hephaestus. You're like, I am God of the forge.
Mm-hmm.
I made this. I made this happen with my hands. Like, it really makes you feel powerful and just like, yeah, I can do anything now. That was easy.
And you can. That is a privilege that men carry that women are, hopefully learning now. Men are given that confidence as a small boy. Here's the tools, smash it, put it together, figure it out. And it's so normal. Although I would say in today's society that's happening less. I come across many people, men and women, who have no idea what tools are or how to use them. But I would love for all women to have a toolbox at 5 years old and learn what they are and what the names are and how they work. And because it is very empowering to think that something breaks in front of you and you're like, before I call someone else, I'm going to see if I can fix this, because most of the time you can.
Yeah, and it's leaked into every part of my life. Like my phone screen broke, and I'm like, well, I guess I gotta order a new phone screen. Not get my phone fixed. Like, no, I could change it. It's fine. I'll watch a YouTube video. I'll figure it out.
And how'd it go?
The screen has not arrived yet, so I still have a broken phone. But I'm confident. I do have a phone where the phone screen attaches, like it's a plug-and-play screen. So I'm like, it's gonna be.
I think you have to use like a heat gun or something to like soften the outside to pop it out or something. I've looked at this before myself too.
My phone actually it unscrews with Torx screws.
Really? Wow.
Like. Yeah. It's a really it's like a construction worker phone. It's a big, beefy.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome, Shannen. Thank you so much for being on the show and for taking time. Any shout outs you want to send out to anybody? Anybody you want to give kudos to or say something about?
Well, I mean, you did just mention the toolbox, so I'd like to give a shout out to my father for giving me tools every Christmas, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's very important. That's all the dads and moms out there. Buy your kids a toolbox when they're little. Show them what they are. Yeah. Tell them what they do. It's very important for their future lives.
Yeah. Even if you don't get into the trades, it's nice to know how to do things.
Exactly. Awesome, Shannen.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
You bet. Next time I'm in the Ottawa region, I always reach out to your dad. I'll have to reach out and make sure that you come out too, or if you don't like hanging out with your dad because he's not cool, we'll go do something else.
No, I've looped around. My dad's cool again.
Awesome. And for all the people that have been listening, if you're interested in the iron worker world, Shannen's Hall is the IW765. I believe the website is ironworkers765.com. You can check them out, or just go to the main Ironworkers webpage. They have them all listed. It's a great trade, great pathway for work and for a career. And as you have heard Shannen talk about, she's having a lot of fun and still loves it 7 years later. And also for the people listening to the podcast, keep following. Thank you for being a part of our podcast and for submitting guests and being faithful listeners. Stay tuned for the next episode. I'll catch you over there. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed the show.